The Story of Ciccu, from the Pink Fairy Book. Once upon a time, there lived a man who had 3 sons. The eldest was called Pepe, the second Alfin, and the youngest Ciccu. They were all very poor, and at last things got so bad that they really had not enough to eat. So the father called his sons and said to them, "My dear boys, I am too old to work any more, and there is nothing left for me but to beg in the streets." "No, no," exclaimed his sons, "that you shall never do. Rather, if it must be, we would do it ourselves. But we have thought of a better plan than that." "What is it?" asked the father. "Well, we will take you to the forest where you shall cut wood, and then we will bind it up in bundles and sell it in town." So their father let them do as they said, and as they made their way into the forest, as the old man was weak from the lack of food, his sons took in turns to carry him on their backs. They built a little hut and where they might take shelter, and set to work. Every morning early after, the father cuts his sticks, and the sons bound them in bundles and carried them into town, bringing back the food the old man so much needed. Some months passed in this way, and the father suddenly fell ill, and knew that the time had come when he must die. He bade his sons fetch him a lawyer, so that he might make his will, and when the man arrived, he explained his wishes. "I have," said he, "a little house in the village, and it overgrows a fig tree. I leave the house to my sons, who are to live in it together. The fig tree I divide as follows. To my son Pepe, I leave the branches. To my son Elfin, I leave the trunk. To my son Ciccu, I leave the fruit. Besides the house and the tree, I have an old coverlet, which I leave to my eldest son, and a horn, and an old purse which I leave to my second son, and a horn which I leave to my youngest son. And now, farewell." Thus speaking, he laid himself down and died quietly. The brothers wept bitterly for their father, whom they loved, and when they had buried him, they began to talk over their future lives. "What shall we do now?" they said. "We shall live in the wood, or go back to the village." And they made up their minds to stay where they were, and continue to earn their living by selling firewood. One very hot evening, after they had been working hard all day, they fell asleep under a tree in front of the hut, and as they slept, there came by 3 fairies who stopped to look at them, as fairies do. "What fine fellows," said one. "Let us give them a present." "Yes, what shall it be?" asked another. "His youth has a coverlet over him," said the first fairy. "When he wraps it around him and wishes himself in any place, he will find himself there in an instant." Then the second fairy said, "This youth has a purse in his hand. I will promise that it shall always give him as much gold as he asks for." Last came the third fairy. "This one has a horn slung around him. When he blows at the small end, the sea shall be covered with ships, and if he blows the wide end, they will all be sunk in the waves." So they vanished, without knowing that Ciccu had been awake and heard all they said. The next day, when they were all cutting wood, he said to his brothers, "The old coverlet and the purse are of no use to you. I wish you would give them all to me. I have a fancy for them, for the sake of old times." Now Pepe and Alvin were very fond of Ciccu, and never refused him anything, So they let him have the coverlet and the purse without a word. When he had got them safely, Ciccu went on. Dear brothers, I am tired of the forest. I want to live in the town and work at some trade. Oh, Ciccu, stay with us, they cried. We are very happy here, and who knows how we will get on elsewhere. We can always try, answered Ciccu, and if times are bad we can come back here and take up woodcutting. So saying, he picked up his bundle of sticks, and his brothers did the same. But when they reached the town, they found that the market was overstocked with firewood, and they did not sell enough to buy themselves a dinner, very far less than any food to carry home. They were wondering sadly what to do when Ciccu said, Come with me to the inn and let us have something to eat. They were so hungry by this time that they did not care much whether they paid for it or not. So they followed Ciccu, who gave his orders to the host. Bring us 3 dishes, the nicest that you have, and a good bottle of wine, too. Ciccu, Ciccu, whispered his brothers, horrified at this extravagance. Are you mad? How do you ever mean to pay for it? Let me alone, replied Ciccu. I know what I am about. And when they had finished their dinner, Ciccu told the others to go on, and he would wait to pay the bill. His brothers hurried on without needing to be told twice. For, they thought, he has no money, and of course there will be a row. When they were out of sight, Ciccu asked the landlord how much he owed, and then said to his purse, Dear purse, give me, I pray you, 6 florins. And instantly 6 florins were in the purse, and he paid the bill and joined his brothers. How did you manage? They asked. Never you mind, answered he. I have paid every penny, and no more would he say. But the other 2 were very uneasy, for they felt surely something must be wrong, and the sooner they parted company with Ciccu, the better. Ciccu understood what they were thinking, and drawing 40 gold pieces from his pocket, he held out 20 to each, saying, Take these and turn them into a good account. I am going away to seek my fortune. Then he embraced them, and struck down another road. He wandered on for many days, till at length he came to a town where the king had his court. First thing Ciccu did was to order himself some fine clothes, and then buy a grand house, just opposite of the palace. Next, he locked his door, and ordered a shower of gold to cover the staircase, and when this was done, the door was flung open wide, and everyone came and peeped in at the shining golden stairs. Lastly, the rumor of these wonders reached the ears of the king, who left his palace to behold these splendors with his own eyes. And Ciccu received him with all respect, and showed him all over the house. When the king went home, he told such stories of what he had seen that his wife and daughter declared that they must go to see them too. So the king sent to ask Ciccu's leave, and Ciccu answered it, that if the queen and the princess would be pleased to do him such great honor, he would show them anything they wished. Now the princess was as beautiful as the sun, and when Ciccu looked upon her, his heart went out to her, and he longed to have her as his wife. The princess saw what was passing in his mind, and how she could make use of it to satisfy her curiosity as to the golden stairs. So she praised him and flattered him, and put cunning questions, till at length Ciccu's head was quite turned, and he told her the whole story of the fairies and their gifts. Then she begged him to lend her the purse for a few days, so that she could have one made like it. And so was the love he had for her that he gave it to her at once. Go. The princess returned to the palace, taking with her the purse, which she had not the smallest intention of ever restoring to Ciccu. Very soon Ciccu had spent all the money he had by him, and could no more without the help of his purse. Of course, he went at once to the king's daughter and asked her if she had done with it, but she put him off with some excuse and told him to come back the next day. Princesses. The next day it was the same thing, and the next, till a great rage filled Ciccu's heart instead of the love that had been there. And when night came, he took in his hand a thick stick, wrapped himself in the coverlet, and wished himself into the chamber of the princess. The princess was asleep, but Ciccu seized her arm and pulled her out of the bed, and beat her till she gave back the purse. Then he took up the coverlet and wished he was safe in his own house. Yeah. No sooner had he gone than the princess hastened to her father and complained about her sufferings. Then the king rose up in a fury and commanded Ciccu be brought before him. "You richly deserve death," he said, "but I will allow you to live if you will instantly hand over the coverlet, the purse, and the horn." What could Ciccu do? Life was sweet, and he was in the power of the king. So he gave up silently his ill-gotten goods, and was as poor as he was as a boy. While he was wondering how he could live, it suddenly came to him in his mind that this was the season for figs to ripen, and he said to himself, "I will go and see if the tree has borne well." So he set off home, where his brothers still lived, and found them living very uncomfortably, for they had spent all of their money, and did not know how to make any more. However, he was pleased to see the fig tree looked in splendid condition, and was full of fruit. He ran and fetched a basket, and was just feeling for the figs to stop which one of them was ripe, when his brother Pepe called to him, "Stop! The figs, of course, are yours, but the branches they grow on are mine, and I forbid you to touch them." Ciccu did not answer, but a ladder against the tree, and so he could reach the topmost branches, and had his foot almost on the first rung, when he heard the voice of his brother Alphen. "Stop! The trunk belongs to me, and I forbid you to touch it." Bastards. Then they began to quarrel violently, and there seemed no chance they would ever cease, till one of them said, "Let us go before a judge." The others agreed, and when they found a man whom they could trust, Ciccu told him the whole story. "This is my verdict," said the judge. "The figs in truth belong to you, but you cannot pick them without touching both trunk and the branches. Therefore you must give your first basketful to your brother Pepe, and the price of his leave to put your ladder against the tree, and the second basketful to your brother Alphen, for a leaf to shake his boughs. The rest you can keep for yourself." The brothers were contented and returned home, saying one to the other, "We will each send us a basket of figs to the king. Perhaps he will forgive us something in return. If he does, we will divide it faithfully between us." So the best of figs were carefully packed in a basket, and Pepe set out to the castle. On the road he met a little old man who stopped him and said to him,
"What have you got there, my fine fellow?"
"What is it to you?" was the answer. "Mind your own business." But the old man only repeated his question, and Pepe got rid of him, exclaimed in anger, "Dirt!"
"Good," replied the old man. "Dirt, you have said, and dirt let it be."
Pepe only tossed his head and went on his way till he got to the castle, where he knocked on the door. "I have a basket of lovely figs for the king," he said to the servant who opened it, "if his majesty will be graciously pleased to accept them with my humble duty." The king loved figs, and ordered Pepe to be admitted to his presence, and a silver dish to be brought on which to put the figs. When Pepe uncovered his basket, sure enough, a layer of beautiful figs met the king's eyes, but underneath there was nothing but dirt. "How dare you play a trick on me?" shrieked the king in a rage. "Take him away and give him 50 lashes." This was done, and Pepe returned home, sore and angry, but determined to say nothing about his adventure. When his brothers asked him what had happened, he only answered, "When we have all three been, I will tell you." A few days after this, a few more figs were ready for plucking, and Elfin in his turn set out to the palace. He had not gone far down the road before he met the old man, who asked him what he had in his basket. "Horns," answered Elfin shortly.
"Good," replied the old man. "Horns you have said, and horns let it be."
When Elfin reached the castle, he knocked on the door and said to the servants, "Here's a lovely basket of figs, if his majesty is good enough to accept them with my humble duty." The king commanded that Elfin should be admitted to his presence, and a silver dish be brought on which the figs may be laid. When the basket was uncovered, some beautiful purple figs lay on top, but underneath there was nothing but horns. Then the king was beside himself with passion, and screamed out, "Is this a plot to mock me? Take him away and give him 150 lashes!" So Alfred went sadly home, but would not tell anything of his ventures, only saying grimly, "Now it's Ciccu's turn." Ciccu had to wait a little before he gathered the last figs from the tree, and these were not nearly so good as the first set. However, he plucked them, as they had agreed, and set out to the king's palace. The old man was still on the road, and came up to Ciccu.
"What have you got in the basket?"
"Figs for the king," answered he.
"Let me have a peep."
And Ciccu lifted the lid.
"Oh, do give me one. I'm so fond of figs,"
begged the little man. "I'm afraid if I do, the whole show," replied Ciccu. But he was very good-natured, and gave him one. The old man ate it greedily, and kept the stalk in his hand, and then asked for another, and another, and another, till he had eaten half the basketful. "But there are not enough left to take to the king," murmured Ciccu.
"Don't be anxious,"
said the old man, throwing the stalks back into the basket.
"Just go out and carry the basket to the castle, and it will bring you luck."
Ciccu did not much like it. However, he went on his way, and with a trembling heart rang the castle bell. "Here are some lovely figs for the king," he said, "if his majesty will graciously accept them with my humble duty." When the king was told there was another man with a basket of figs, he cried out, "Oh, have him in, have him in. I suppose it is a wager." But Ciccu uncovered the basket, and there lay a pile of beautiful, ripe figs. And the king was delighted, and emptied them himself on the silver dish, and gave 5 florins to Ciccu, and offered besides to take him into his service. Ciccu accepted gratefully, but he said he must return home and give the 5 florins to his brothers. When he got home, Pepe spoke. "Now we'll see what we each got for the king. I received myself from him 50 lashes." "And I 150, added Elfin. "And I have 5 florins and some sweets, which we can divide between you two, for the king has taken me into his service." And Ciccu went back to the court and served the king, and the king loved him. But the other two brothers heard that Ciccu had become quite an important person, and they grew envious. And they thought they could put him down to shame. At last they came to the king and said to him, "O king, your palace is beautiful indeed, but to be worthy of you it lacks one thing, the sword of the man-eater." "How can I get it?" asked the king. "Oh, Ciccu can get it for you. Ask him." So the king sent for Ciccu and said to him, "Ciccu, you must pay any price to manage to get the sword of the man-eater." Ciccu was very much surprised at this sudden command, and he walked thoughtfully away to the stables and began to stroke his favorite horse, saying to himself, "Ah, my pet, we must bid each other goodbye, for the king has sent me away to get the sword of the man-eater." Oh, here she comes. Now this horse was not like other horses, for it was a talking horse, as they are, and knew a great deal about many things. So he answered, "Fear nothing, and do as I tell you. Beg the king to give you 50 gold pieces and leave to ride me, and the rest will be easy." Ciccu believed what the horse said, and prayed the king to grant him what he asked. Then the two friends set out, but the horse chose what roads he pleased and directed Ciccu in everything. It took them many days' hard riding before they reached the country where the man-eater lived. And then the horse told Ciccu to stop a group of old women who were coming chattering through the wood, and offer them each a shilling if they would collect a number of mosquitoes and tie them into a bag. When the bag was full, Ciccu put it on the shoulder and stole into the house of the man-eater, who had gone to look for his dinner, and then let them all out in his bedroom. He hid himself carefully under the bed and waited. The man-eater came in late, very tired with its long walk, and flung himself on the bed, placing his sword with its shining blade by his side. Scarcely had he laid down than the mosquitoes began to buzz about and bite him, and he rolled from side to side trying to catch them, but he never could do it, though they always seemed to be close to his nose. He was so busy over the mosquitoes that he did not hear Ciccu steal softly out, or see him catch up the sword. But the horse heard and stood ready at the door, and as Ciccu came flying down the stairs and jumped on his back, he sped away like the wind and never stopped till they arrived at the king's palace. The king had suffered much pain in his absence, thinking that if the man-eater ate Ciccu, it would all be his fault. Duh. And he was so overjoyed to have him safe that he almost forgot the sword which he had sent him to bring. But the two brothers did not love Ciccu any better because he had succeeded when they had hoped he would have failed and been eaten. And one day they spoke to the king. "It is all very well for Ciccu to have gotten possession of the sword, but it would have been far more to your majesty's honor if he had captured the man-eater himself." The king thought about these words, and at last he said to Ciccu, "Ciccu, I shall never rest until you bring me back the man-eater himself. You may have any help you like, but somehow or other you must manage to do it." Ciccu felt very much cast down by these words, and went to the stable to ask advice of his friend the horse. "Fear nothing," said the horse. "Just say you want me and 50 gold pieces." Ciccu did as he was bid, and the two set out together. When they reached the country of the man-eater, Ciccu made all the church bells toll, and a proclamation was made. Ciccu, the servant of the king, is dead. The man-eater soon heard what everyone was saying, and was glad in his heart, for he thought, well, it is good news that the thief who stole my sword is dead. How did he know? But Ciccu bought an axe and a saw, and cut down a pine tree in the nearest wood, and began to hew it into planks. What are you doing in my wood? Asked the man-eater, coming up. Noble lord, answered Ciccu, I'm making a coffin for the body of Ciccu, who is dead. Don't be in a hurry, answered the man-eater, who of course did not know whom he was talking to, because he never saw him. And perhaps I can help you. And they set out to work sawing and fitting, and very soon the coffin was finished. Then Ciccu scratched his ear thoughtfully and cried, Idiot that I am, I never took any measures. How am I to know if it's big enough? But now I come to think of it, Ciccu was about your size. I wonder if you would be so good as to put yourself in the coffin and see if there's room enough. Oh, delighted, said the man-eater, and laid himself at full length in the coffin. Ciccu clamped on the lid, and put a strong cord around it, and tied it fast on his horse, then rode back to the king. And when the king saw that he really had brought back the man-eater, he commanded a huge iron chest to be brought and locked the coffin up inside. Yikes. Just about this time the queen died, and soon after the king thought he would like to marry again. He sought everywhere, but he could not hear of any princess that took his fancy. Then the two envious brothers came to him and said, Oh, king, there's but woman that is worthy to be your wife, and that is she who is fairest in the whole world. But where can I find her? Said the king. Oh, Ciccu will know. He will bring you to her. Now the king had got so used to depending on Ciccu that he really believed he could do everything. So he sent for him and said, Ciccu, within 8 days I need you to bring me the fairest in the whole world. I will have you hewn into 1,000 pieces. Damn. This mission seemed to Ciccu 100 times worse than any of the others, and with tears in his eyes he took his way to the stables. Cheer up, laughed his horse. Tell the king that you must have some bread and honey, and a purse of gold. Leave you the rest to me. Ciccu did as he was bid, and they started at a gallop. After they had ridden some way, they saw a swarm of bees lying on the ground, so hungry and weak that they were unable to fly. Get down and give those poor things some honey, said the horse, and Ciccu dismounted. And by they came to a stream, on the bank of which was a fish, flapping feebly about in his efforts to reach the water. Jump down and throw the fish in the water. It will be useful to us. And Ciccu did so. Farther along the hillside they saw an eagle whose leg was caught in a snare. Go and free that eagle from the snare. It will be useful to us. And in a moment the eagle was soaring up in the sky. At length they came to the castle where the fairest in the world lived with her parents. Then said the horse, You must get down and sit upon a stone, for I must enter the castle alone. Directly you will see me come tearing with the princess on my back. Jump up behind and hold her fast so that she does not escape you. If you fail to do this, we are both lost. Ciccu seated himself on a stone, and the horse went into the courtyard of the castle, where he began to trot around in a graceful and elegant manner. Soon after, a crowd collected, first to watch him and then to pat him, and the king and the queen and the princess came with the rest. The eyes of the fairest in the world brightened as she looked, and she sprang upon the horse's saddle, crying,
"Oh, I really must ride him a little."
But the horse made one bound forward, and the princess was forced to hold tight by his mane, lest she would fall off. And as they dashed past the stone where Ciccu was waiting for them, he swung himself up and held her around the waist. As he put his arms around her waist, the fairest in the world unwound the veil from her head and cast it to the ground. And then she drew a ring from her finger and flung it into the stream. But she said nothing, and they rode on fast. The king of Ciccu's country was watching for them from the top of a tower, and when he saw in the distance a cloud of dust, he ran down to the steps to be ready to receive them. Bowing low before the fairest in the world, he spoke. "Noble lady, will you do me the honor to become my wife?" Royals. But she answered, "That can only be when Ciccu brings me the veil that I let fall from the way here." The king turned to Ciccu and said, "Ciccu, if you do not find the veil at once, you will lose your head." Demanding. Ciccu, who by this time had hoped for a little peace, felt his heart sink at this fresh errand, and he went to the stable to complain to the faithful horse. "It will all be all right," answered the horse, when he heard of this tale. "Just take enough food for the day for both of us, and we will be back." They rode back all the way they had come until they reached the place where they found the eagle caught in the snare. Then the horse bade Ciccu to call 3 times on the king of the birds, and when he replied, to beg him to fetch the veil which the fairest in the world had let fall. "Wait a moment," answered the voice that seemed to come from somewhere very up high indeed. "An eagle was playing with it just now, and he will be here with it in an instant." And a few minutes after, there was a sound of wings, and an eagle came fluttering towards them with the veil in its beak. And Ciccu saw it was the same eagle that he had freed from the snare. So he took the veil and rode back to the king. Now the king was enchanted to see him, and took the veil from Ciccu and hung it over the princess, crying, "Here is the veil you asked for, so I claim you for my wife." That's how it works.
"Not so fast," she answered. "I can never be your wife till Ciccu puts on my finger the ring that I threw into the stream."
Ciccu, who was standing by expecting something of the sort, bowed his head when he heard her words, and went straight to the horse. "Mount at once," said the horse. "This time it is very simple." And he carried Ciccu to the banks of the little stream. "Now call 3 times on the Emperor of Fishes, and beg him to restore you the ring that the princess dropped." Because, Emperor of Fishes has nothing better to do. Go for a ring. Ciccu did as the horse told him, and a voice was heard in answer that seemed to come from a very long way off. "What is your will?" it asked. Ciccu replied that he had been commanded to bring back the ring of the princess had flung as she rode past. "A fish is playing with it just now," replied the voice. "However, you shall have it without delay." And, sure enough, very soon a little fish was seen rising to the surface of the water with a lost ring in its mouth. And Ciccu knew him to be the fish he had saved from death, and he took the ring and rode back to the king.
"That is not enough," exclaimed the princess when she saw the ring. "Before we can be made man and wife, the oven must be heated for 3 days and 3 nights, and Ciccu must jump in."
What? And the king forgot how Ciccu had served him, and desired him to do as the princess said. This time Ciccu felt that no escape was possible, and went to the horse and laid his hand on his neck. It is indeed goodbye. There's no way I can get helped out of this one, even from you. And he told him what fate awaited him. But the horse said, "Oh, never lose heart, but jump on my back and make me go until foam flies from the flecks all about me. Then get down and scrape off the foam with a knife. This you must rub all over you, and when you are quite covered you may suffer yourself to be cast into the oven, for the fire will not hurt you, or anything else." And Ciccu did exactly as the horse bade him, and went back to the king, and before the eyes of the fairest in the world, sprang into the oven. And when the fairest of the world saw what he had done, love entered into her heart, and she said to the king, "One more thing. Before I can be your wife, you must jump into the oven as Ciccu has done." "Willingly," replied the king, stooping over the oven. But on the brink he paused for a moment and called to Ciccu. "Tell me, Ciccu, how did you manage to prevent the fire from burning you?" Now, Ciccu could not forgive his master, whom he had served so faithfully, for sending him to his death without a thought. So he answered, "I rubbed myself all over with fat, and am not even singed." When he heard these words, the king, whose head was full of the princess, never stopped to inquire if they were true, and smeared himself over with the fat and sprang into the oven. And in a moment the fire caught him, and he was burnt up. Then the fairest in the world held out her hand to Ciccu and smiled, saying, "Now we will be man and wife." So Ciccu married the fairest in the world and became king of the country.